Hello and welcome to Telling Your Asset Management Story. Russ Katherman has spent much of his career working in facilities and asset management, helping organizations understand the true value of buildings and infrastructure they depend on every day. Over the years, he's seen how the field has evolved, from reactive maintenance to more strategic, data-driven decision-making. In this episode, we are going to talk about Russ's journey into the profession, the lessons he's learned along the way, and how leaders today are balancing budgets, priorities, and long-term planning.
Russ, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Telling Your Asset Management Story. I know our audience is going to learn a lot from you, your journey, and your experience at the state of Montana. So thanks for joining us.
Oh man, thanks for the opportunity. Really looking forward to it.
Awesome. So we always start with a little bit of your asset management journey, your backstory or your origin story, if you will. So can you just give our audience a bit of an understanding about how you ended up where you are at the state of Montana, Russ, throughout your career and the journey that brought you there?
Sure. I thought a fair bit about that, and it actually goes back to as far back as my grandfather. He was in the boiler and heating industry, and then my dad worked facilities maintenance for a while. So growing up, I was always around buildings and facilities, and got into it pretty early. Did some residential home construction, and went to school, got a degree in mechanical engineering, and I got my license. Worked for a private firm for a while, worked for the federal government for a while, and now work for the state of Montana for nearly 30 years in the design and construction project management group. So
that's awesome. That's really neat that the family lineage, because we always like to joke that there's not a lot of people running around 5 or 6 years old going, I want to be in facility management or facility asset management. But maybe you are the first one that I've ever met that was, because your father and your grandfather were in the space. That's really pretty cool.
I've told people I kind of look at myself as a bit of a facilities nerd. It's just something that's always had a keen interest.
That's great. Well, and I mean, I'm sure being around the work that your dad and your grandfather were doing probably gave you a unique perspective that's helped throughout the career. What one thing did you learn from watching your dad and your grandfather in the business that you've brought through your career?
Great question. I've really tried to focus on a couple things that they early on, I think, influenced me. Was there's a ton of knowledge of a lot of folks out in the field, the hands-on experience. And initially I kind of thought, well, it's a lot of book learning and things, and there's tons of that, of course, but it's one of the things my dad always said is never discount the information you get from the folks who deal with the building from day to day, like he did. So I dragged that into my project management, design and construction experience.
No, that's awesome. That's what great wisdom to share, right? Because the folks that are on the tools in the buildings every day are going to have so much more knowledge than like, again, we have that same kind of approach. Like, we're going to show up for a day or two in a building. There's no way we're going to be able to see or know everything that the folks that have been in there for 20 years, hands-on tools and
Right.
in there. That's an awesome wisdom to have shared to bring throughout your career. So no, that's great. So can you give us a little bit of background on the portfolio that you're involved in, Russ, in terms of size, types of buildings? I mean, it's a statewide portfolio, so there's probably tons of different types of buildings and challenges. So just help our audience understand your perspective from that.
Oh, I appreciate that. I don't know how all the other states are structured. We do share a lot through our association connections and that, but in Montana, we are centralized with the Architecture and Engineering Office, where I'm the administrator, and we do facilities for all the state agencies. So we've done everything. We got, as usual, you might expect, there's always something going on a university campus. It could be anywhere around the states. We put in a lot of miles, and a lot of academic buildings, a lot of facility support buildings for them, their heating plants, those kinds of things. And then for other departments, you get a wide variety of care facilities, whether it's for our public health department. You get veterans care facilities. We do right now. We're in the midst of about a $400 million overhaul and rebuild of a lot of new and expanded facilities for the Department of Corrections. So it's one of the rewarding parts of working at state facilities is you get this huge variety, and you're not in like a spot where you're doing only offices or you're doing only classrooms. Um, we're doing things right now. Well, for instance, there's in Montana, is folks might be familiar with a lot of wildfires, right? And they bring in a lot of crews to help fight these forest fires. And our natural resources folks have facilities, and we're in the middle of building what we call the bunkhouses. And so they're seasonal firefighter. When folks fly in from out of state to help fight these fires, try to give them a nice place to stay. So it's a huge variety of things that it makes it very rewarding. Um, we're getting ready to start a repair to the Copper Dome on the Capitol. We just finished.
Oh wow, that'd be a really neat one.
Yeah, we just finished our new State Heritage Center, the new State History Museum, and it's getting rave reviews. I'm happy to say. Haven't only had one complaint so far. We didn't put enough plug-in outlets in the cafe. And I told the person, I
don't think there's enough.
Yeah, I told him, I said, well, the idea is not for you to sit in the cafe. You're supposed to go over here to the exhibits. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, in today's day and age, there's never enough outlets for everybody to plug in their phone, right? So that's probably that's probably a pretty common complaint for a lot of projects. Just out of curiosity, Russ, with such a diverse portfolio, both geographically and building type, what do you find the biggest, before we get into your overall asset management challenges, we'll talk about in just a sec, how do you balance all those different building types and stakeholder requirements and things like that? Like just managing that diverse of a portfolio. What are the biggest challenges and how do you address them? With
you're right. It is a challenge. One of the benefits we have, we've got a lot of AE firms in the state with a great depth of knowledge and background, and they work out of state too. So we're just a little over 1 million in population, so they've got to work in other places, and they're able to bring a lot of that information back to us. The agencies help a ton. They help us, of course, with how they want to function, and then we try to balance all of that. With everybody knows, with the budget, there's never enough budget, and it's never delivered fast enough. So it is a challenge, but I would say I got a good team and very experienced, but it helps them in their careers too to be able to dive into things that they're not familiar with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I imagine after a few years with your team, you probably have seen dozens of different kinds of buildings. So from an experience perspective, that's awesome for somebody, particularly somebody maybe newer in their career who's just kind of getting their feet wet, to be able to get into all these different types of buildings. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, there's always a new challenge. It's always you might think you understand a particular building type, but invariably something comes up that you hadn't experienced before, and that's part of what makes it enjoyable, frankly.
And you sort of mentioned, we sort of talked about the challenges of the diverse portfolio, but kind of turning our attention to the asset management side of things for your portfolio. What are beyond the complexity, but what are the other top 3 challenges or something that 2, 3, 4, whatever that you're facing as it relates to managing and maintaining and improving your portfolio?
Sure. No, appreciate that question. It's been a series of improvements that we've tried to implement over the last 20 years or so. And I would say we started with a tremendous lack of information about the older facilities. Just no one had really done facility assessments. We didn't know current status. and over time we were successful at getting some statute changes to do two things: mandate facility assessments on a continuing cycle, which that was a huge plus. Um, it, our agency folks weren't always excited about that because it's one of those things that added to their workload, right? And so I get it, I understand that's totally fair. And then the other thing that we were able to work from a couple of other state models was get some uh, annual funding for deferred maintenance. And I don't know if our statute's totally unique in this regard. So we get a percentage of replacement value, like very similar to, say, Utah and I think a couple of the other states. But one of the things that collaboratively with the legislature that worked out was they put a restriction in the statute that we have to fund major repair projects, what we call them, deferred maintenance projects, to the tune
Mm-hmm.
of 0.6% of the replacement value of the portfolio, and that's
Oh,
primary. So
nice.
if that doesn't get funded, then the legislature put a restriction on itself that it cannot fund new square footage. So
Oh,
I
that's
don't
awesome. Wow,
know
that's
if
amazing.
that's I don't know if that's a wrinkle that unique to Montana, but we like it. Again, as a
Interesting.
facility guy,
Yeah,
there's
I haven't.
nothing worse than building something and then not having the funding to maintain it. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't. I mean, there could be another state out there that has something like that, but I haven't heard of one. And the fact that one, it's indexed to growth, right? Because that's the problem
mm-hmm.
with a lot of places is like they redline your funding and you keep building new stuff and you don't have the money to maintain it, let alone renew it when it gets old. And the fact that they've handcuffed themselves that if they don't fund it, they can't build new. Because let's be honest, everybody wants to build new. Nobody wants to fix anything, right? Because there's no
Right.
where's the fun in that? Nobody shows up with a ribbon cutting for a new roof or a new boiler. But that's excellent. And when did that get put in place, Russ? Is that something that's recent, or has that been in there for a long time? Or
I want to I want to say it was we're a biennial. Every other year as the legislature meets. It's a citizen legislature, and so I want to say it was 2015, I think. So
oh
it's
wow, so like
fairly
over 10
new.
years. Wow, that's excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2017, I think. But I could check for you
Oh
uh, if anybody had a follow up
yeah. No, that's
question or
interesting.
wanted
It's
to
been in
know.
place for at least 4 or 5 cycles. Yeah, four or
Yep,
five cycles, right? Interesting.
yep.
And I guess was there what was the impetus for it? Was there something that occurred across the portfolio, or what was the driver to get them to change? Because I guarantee you, at everybody at every university or every state or every municipality would love to know how to get something like that in place. So I'm just curious what the story was there.
Yeah, it was interesting to have so much legislative buy-in, frankly, because for many sessions, new buildings would get authorized, but then as you know, the capital projects take a while to complete, and then the operation and maintenance funding would come into the budget, and then that legislature that saw the operation and maintenance increase to the budget was like, well, wait a second, we didn't have any say in the building getting built. So they actually put the restriction on themselves, and it was many sessions of buildings getting approved, and then a subsequent legislature being given the bill, basically, and saying, and they finally said, okay, they said enough of this. If we're going to approve a new building, then that same legislature has to also appropriate the operation and maintenance money for, and it's set up for when we get a certificate of occupancy, that's when that O&M money kicks in. So they again restricted themselves because of many years of new square footage being added to the portfolio and no way to pay for it.
Wow, that's great. I mean, like I said, I mean everybody deals with that all the time, but this, like I said, this is your legislature is the first one that I've seen kind of tackle it in a meaningful way that they can't that where they can't kind of get out of it. There doesn't sound like there's a loophole there. If they don't, they can't build new, which is huge. So that's
Yep.
that's excellent. And like I said, if after some other people hear this, you might get some phone calls going, "Hey, how can I get my guys to talk to your guys? Because I want them to think that way too." So
Be
hopefully,
happy to do it.
yeah, that would be awesome.
Be
No, that's
happy to do
great.
it.
So
It's working out well for us, for sure. Yep.
yeah. Absolutely. No, I like I said, I know so many organizations where they just redline O&M, right? O&M's been redlined
Mm-hmm.
for 10 years, and our
Oh yeah.
portfolio is 30% bigger, and and not only that, but the new builds are more complicated, so they tend to need more maintenance and more preventative maintenance and more other things like that. So it's almost a double whammy, and not only do we have more square footage, but we have more complex square footage, and we have no more time, money, or people to address it. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
100% agree.
And any other
100%.
challenges, Russ, that you've seen? I mean, that sounds like a great victory over a challenge. But anything else that you're tackling or facing today?
Uh, yeah, a couple of different things. So and maybe it's just me getting older and grumpier, um, but we see a lot of the design concerns, design issues, and things where um, they're not really detailed or fleshed out, and I don't know if it's just like I say, me looking at something and saying, well, sounding like my grandfather when I was a kid, we didn't have this problem because we did this, this, and this. And then you review a set of plans now, and it just seems like the level, the depth of fleshing out the constructability issues doesn't seem to be there. Um, then, of course, then we end up with a lot of change orders and things in construction, as I'm sure anybody who might watch this is familiar with. And so I think that's a challenge. I would say design quality, but I've heard that theme for a long time as well. But so part of that I think is just me getting grumpier. So a couple other
Well, you've
challenges
seen
that I
you've
have,
seen so
yeah, that
much. You've seen so many
experience.
different buildings and things. I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much experience out there that I think um, folks at similar to my stage of my career is trying to look now and say how can I mentor some folks, how can I point out some things for them to look through, and there's time challenges involved with that, but that's another area where I'd really like to dive into is trying to pass along some of these experiences, both good and bad, to help folks watch out for things and help them advance in their careers.
Right. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think certainly, a lot of folks that we talk about have challenges with just finding people, right? Finding good people that are willing to work hard and willing to kind of put in the time to be mentored and to learn and to grow. So that's awesome that you're focusing on that within your team as well. Looking to the future, Russ, beyond kind of beyond what you're facing today, how do you see facility and infrastructure asset management evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? Put on your prediction hat and look into your crystal ball and let us know what you see.
Oh wow, that'd be very interesting. A couple of things at times you kind of do wonder where your profession is going and where facilities are headed. The 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 volume of information is so astounding to me, and the complexity, like you mentioned, is really ramping up. And I kind of wonder who is going to be able to maintain and operate these facilities if we make them too difficult, just from a complexity standpoint. Um, I'm, I'll say I'm fascinated by AI, but I have my concerns that folks are going to rely on it too much. Um, there's again, maybe I go back to that experience with my dad, my grandfathers. Never discount the experience of the person in the field, right? And that how much knowledge and experience that is in dealing with things. And I have concerns that we're going to rely on the machine too much. So, and that's where I appreciate all the advances. Designers are starting to use it more. Our contractors are starting to use it more, and um, my hope is somebody's there to check the output and really dive into that. So, the workforce, I could see big challenges. I'm hoping we're always trying to encourage folks to get into trades. So we're anything specialized. The electricians and the like are always pretty thin and hard to get, as an example. So
Well, and those are certainly a lot of careers that aren't going to be impacted by AI as much, because I just don't think that you're going to see AI installing cable in a building anytime soon, right? So there's the dual benefit of the current need for the trades, as well as the long term, perhaps a less exposure to disruption by AI.
yeah, I would add one more piece to that. The sustainability component is super, and um, you know, I think my curiosity there is, as much as we try to go through the third party certifications and uh, get those different levels for our facilities, what what's the operation and maintenance going to be like uh, 10, 15, 15, 20, 30 years from now with some of these building components? And some of them I don't see changing, but some of them I can see great benefit uh, to uh, to the facilities, to the folks living in the facilities, and I really hope that we can continue to advance the interior environment and make that where folks are more productive and there's more collaboration. There's transitions, for instance, I never thought I would see. Um, Going reflecting back, going to school, we were always isolated. You learn on your own. You had a little bit of group effort or a group project. But now doing classroom buildings and sitting in these design sessions with faculty and even other students, and how they teach and how students learn in so much more of a collaborative environment is pretty amazing, really. I'm kind of
Yeah.
jealous. I'm kind of
No, it's true. And I mean, I love the fact that you brought up the indoor, the indoor environment, because so much of the goals and objectives of the different departments and agencies within the state, the facilities play such a major role in their ability to deliver whatever their program is, whether it's school or healthcare or office environment or whatever the case is. And so I love that you're thinking about that and optimizing for that to achieve those goals and objectives through the facility, because too oftentimes it's I mean, not for facilities folks, right, but for organizations, a lot of times the facilities are an afterthought, right? They're not really thought of as part of the strategy. But as soon as you start to have those conversations about how do we maximize the productivity of X, whether that's a student or a researcher or a healer or an office worker,
mm-hmm.
all of a sudden that's a whole different perspective on the facility. So that's awesome that you're talking in that language, both inside your department and presumably up to the legislature in the state.
Yeah, one of the other things we're trying to do is encourage along those lines of mission space and how agencies operate, function, do their main objectives. And you're right, a lot of times facilities are an afterthought. Is we've got to put in statute this last session that for a new build, similar to the funding and the O&M, one of the other things we were struggling with was uh, strategic mission. Like where is your department going, or where is this program headed? So that, to exactly your point, is how do your current facilities help you or hurt you, and strategically where do you see your department going? And we made it a 6 year, so they don't have to project out too far, but it was far enough that it covered 3 legislative sessions. So we could have a change in administration, a change in executives, a change in uh, our legislators through the elections, of course, through all the, and we have term limits. So all of those impacts is we wanted a duration that was just long enough to say, uh, are you thinking strategically about where your department, where your program, where your institution is headed? And I think we've got good progress on that so far.
That wow, that's I mean to yeah, I'm fascinated by how much um, focus or attention the facilities in the built environment get at at the legislative level. That's amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
like again I see so many people fighting to just get a momentary ear or a thought. Russ, I'm just wondering what is the secret sauce that you've been able that you or the state or your team or the legislature has sort of come across, because I know so many organizations again, whether it's a university or a state government or whatever, they struggle to get facilities even thought of or on the agenda or anything like this. It sounds like over and over again you've been able to have the legislature look to facilities as a strategic asset. Is there any secret to it, or what could others try to repeat and learn from your experience?
Oh, great question. I've uh, been curious how other states deal with it, and our association involvement's really helped enlighten that some. So I think a couple of things over the years, and it's been a pretty deep dive even for my predecessor, and I go back, I think at least 15 legislative sessions, so almost 30 years, and each one has its own unique personality. But underlying all that, there's there's always been an interest in the facilities, the cost of facilities, and I'm this is me speculating here that it's connected to um, being a fairly fiscally conservative state, and there are a fair number of folks uh, in the executive branch and the legislative branch over the years who've taken a keen eye to these costs, and so they've been able to pass that along, that level of interest, and so we've always had a good rapport with a lot of our elected officials with the cost of facilities, how much gets built, and the like. So yeah, I don't know if there's a big secret sauce to it, but I think staying involved. Um, we stay closely connected with the budget office. We stay very connected uh, with our uh, legislative group. There's what's known as the Long Range Planning Committee, and it's made up of some senators and some representatives, and they look at everything and that's would be in that capacity. So they look at long range IT procurement. They look at long range building planning, which is my area, and they've always had a very good eye and level of involvement in interest in how much money they're appropriating for facilities.
Thanks so much for all the insights, Russ. Just to wrap things up a little bit, you mentioned the industry association a couple of times, and that's actually where we had a chance to meet, is through the National Association of State Facility Administrators, or NASFA. Can you just share for our audience as we close things out a little bit here? What would you tell to another state facility person, or somebody else in another sector that has an industry association or peer group that they can get involved in? How would you encourage them to get involved?
Oh man, thanks so much for that. It has been a huge benefit, reward, however you want to classify it, to my entire career to be involved with NASFA. Um, Early on, when I first came to work for Montana, I remember the first association meeting I went to in 1997, and been involved ever since, and continually just want to encourage any state, if you're not a member, please check it out. There's a ton of experience, and the thing that caught me that was so different early on than some of the other conferences and things I would go to was the connection with folks was so much deeper, that we would sit and go through problems, and then even follow up afterward. Hey, I met you at the conference. You mentioned you have this solution for this problem, and we're dealing with something similar. And it kept snowballing from there. And just
That's
trying to
awesome.
share solutions, come up with great ideas. How do you deal with this security issue, or your real estate issue, or this deferred
Mm-hmm.
maintenance problem? So it's not all about um, just design and construction. I've picked up so
Mm-hmm.
much from other fields and other areas of interest, from leasing to fleet management. Just learning some of those things has really helped my understanding of how my niche, my area of state government, can help someone else. And so I think it's just been incredibly rewarding throughout my whole career to be affiliated with the association. I would just say get involved at some level in whatever association helps you out, and just dive in. Don't go to just the conferences and do that, but talk to the folks who sponsor it. Talk to the vendors. Don't just go by the booth and wave and say hi, but get to know folks a little bit. And there's so much information there that I think we can glean from each other. That it's just fantastic for facilities and where we're headed.
No, that's awesome, and thanks for that insight, Russ. Thanks so much for sharing all the insights and the unique environment that you have in Montana around the focus on facilities and your ability to get time and focus from the legislature. I think that'd be hugely valuable for a lot of folks, and I wouldn't be surprised if you get a few calls from folks going, "Hey, I want some of that. How can I get that?" So thank you very much,
Sure.
sir. If we don't have a chance before, we'll definitely see you at the NASFA conference in Austin. And thanks for joining us on this episode of
Sounds
Telling Your
great.
Asset
Yeah,
Management
no,
Story.
thank you guys so much.
Russ, thanks again for taking the time to share your story. Your perspectives really underscore how asset management has grown into a strategic discipline, one that helps organizations make smarter, more sustainable decisions about the spaces they operate. It's been great hearing about your experiences and the lessons you've picked up along the way. Thanks for joining us on Telling Your Asset Management Story.